As a university student, one of the tasks you'll be asked to regularly undertake is reading a journal article. Journal articles are academic papers published in scholarly magazines called journals. Across different academic fields, journal articles often publish the results of research studies. Now, if you haven't spent much time reading journal articles in the past, the thought of trying to read and understand this type of material might seem a bit overwhelming at first. Try not to worry though, because I'm about to give you a few pointers that will hopefully take some of the stress out of the process and make it more systematic and streamlined for you. Similar to other types of reading you'll undertake here at uni, try to think about the task of reading a journal article as one of information seeking rather than one that requires you to read and retain every word of the paper. Knowing the structure of a journal article will help you with this. Now, unless it's a special type of paper, such as a systematic review or a practice report, a typical journal article, which is publishing the results of a research study, will have a consistent and predictable layout, consisting of a number of different sections. By knowing the information contained in each of these sections, you can target your reading and be an effective information seeker and go straight to the information you need. The traditional sections of a journal article are the abstract, introduction, method, results, discussion, and reference list. So let's go through each of these sections now individually to give you a clear idea about the information contained in each. A journal article will always start with an abstract, sometimes called an executive summary. As the first thing you read, the abstract gives you a concise summary of the article, providing a clear outline of the essential elements of the study. Essentially, the abstract defines the background and the aim of the study, describes the methods used to undertake the research, summarises the main findings, and then highlights the importance of these findings. The next major section in a journal article is the introduction. The introduction is where the authors provide the following information in the following order. Firstly, a broad introduction to the topic or the research area is presented. This is then followed by a review of past studies undertaken in that research area. Now, this is called the literature review. Next, the authors provide an outline of the aims and the rationale, or the reason, for the current study. Now, that's the one that's being reported on in the article. At the very end of an introduction is where you'll find a clear statement of the hypotheses or predictions that the researchers are investigating in the current study. After the introduction, the next major section in a journal article is the method, sometimes also called methods or methodology. In the method, the authors describe in detail how their study was conducted. The method usually contains 3 to 4 subsections. The first subsection outlines specific details of the participants of the research study. For example, who they are, how many were recruited, and their relevant demographic factors, in addition to how the participants were recruited and where from. The next subsection provides information about the materials and equipment used in the study, such as computing or lab equipment, and details of questionnaires used, or information on interventions or treatments that may have been investigated. The third subsection provides specific details about the procedure used in the study. So basically, it outlines what the participants were required to do. Some authors will also include more specific details about the overall research design in the methods section, such as the type of study being conducted and how specifically data was examined. After the method, the next major section in a journal article is the results. In the results section, the authors describe in detail how they analysed the data and what the data showed. More specifically, a results section will summarise what statistical analyses were conducted on the data. It'll also describe the main findings in relation to each of the hypotheses stated in the introduction. If you remember, the hypotheses were the predictions that the authors were examining in the study. And finally, the results section will also present the data that relates to each of the main findings, so that the reader can see that the numbers are there to back up the description of the findings. After the results, the final section in the body of a journal article is the discussion, sometimes also called the conclusion. In the discussion, the authors provide a summary of the findings and highlight their importance and contribution to the research area. In particular, the discussion will provide a clear summary of all of the main findings of the study. It'll then discuss how these findings fit into the research context by showing how they relate to past studies conducted in that area. The implications of the findings will then be discussed. Now, implications are the practical importance of the findings. So for example, how can the findings be used to help people, or how do they further that particular field of research? Authors will then identify the limitations involved in their study and map out some possible directions for future research in the area. At the end of a journal article is where the authors list all of the references that they have cited throughout the paper. Now these are the sources of evidence that they have referred to throughout the article. So by knowing the information in each of these different sections, you can now be an effective information seeker when reading a journal article. So for example, if you needed to know more information about the participants of a research study to see if it might be relevant for one of your assignment questions, you now know you can go right to the start of a method section to find this information. Or perhaps you need a really clear and concise summary of all of the main findings of a study. You know that the authors will have included this right at the start of their discussion. So next time you need to read a journal article, try not to get overwhelmed. Instead of trying to read, understand and retain every word, try to remember the simple structure we've mapped out here and use it as a study tool. It will enable you to be an active and confident information seeker so that you can find the information that you need quickly and easily. It will also help you make the most of your very precious time as a university student.